It was another busy week of news about multiple federal investigations into former President Trump and his allies. On Thursday, a federal judge appointed a special master to review the documents taken by the FBI during its search of former President Trump's home. The judge also ruled that the DOJ will continue to be blocked from accessing the roughly 100 classified files seized for its use in its criminal investigation. Now, that came after former President Trump blasted the DOJ on the You It show.
I have the absolute right to declassify. Well, I can't imagine being indicted. I've done nothing wrong. Look, if it happened, I think you'd have problems in this country, the likes of which perhaps we've never seen before. I don't think the people of the United States would stand for it.
Now, despite Trump's claims that he declassified the documents, his lawyers have actually avoided making that exact assertion in court. And a number of former Trump administration officials have said they believe that claim is patently false. Meanwhile, this week, the New York Times also reported that the DOJ issued 40 subpoenas to members of Trump's inner circle, and at least 2 top Trump advisors had their phones seized. Reports say the actions show a substantial escalation of the DOJ investigation into Trump's efforts to subvert the 2020 election. Joining me to discuss this and more, Josh Gerstein, the senior legal affairs reporter for Politico, Mariana Sotomayor, congressional reporter for The Washington Post, and joining me around the table, Zolan Kanu-Youngs, White House correspondent for The New York Times, and Susan Page, Washington bureau chief for USA Today. So thank you all for being here. Josh, I have to start with you. The judge here is giving the special master until November 30th a deadline to review these files, and the DOJ is expected in a filing to ask an appeals court to step in. So what more do we know about how all of this impacts the investigation and the impact of this special master?
Well, right now, Yamiche, the investigation remains basically on hold, at least as regards any of the classified documents, and even more broadly, all the records that Trump had down there at Mar-a-Lago. That's why the Justice Department is taking this issue to a federal appeals court, because they believe it's basically unprecedented for a federal judge to say you have to basically halt your investigation. Now, she did say you can continue to do what's basically a damage assessment of what might have been the national security harm from these records being down at Mar-a-Lago, but the Justice Department's position so far has been that there's really no practical way to do that without involving the criminal investigators who know, for example, who was there at Mar-a-Lago, who might have seen these documents. And you can't really separate that from an effort to figure out what the damage is resulting from the presence of the records down there.
And with all those questions, there's also big questions about this special master. We know that he's a former New York judge. What more do we know about the person that has been appointed here? He's already saying that he wants to have a conference next week in Brooklyn, New York.
Right. So he's based in Brooklyn. His name is Raymond Deary. He is a Reagan appointee. He's very well respected, I think, across the political spectrum. Obviously, he's been on the bench for quite a long time as a Reagan appointee. He's in senior status, which is sort of usually a semi-retired position. He served for a time on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which handles sensitive national security matters. I think the big question here is not so much him, but his very, very broad role that Judge Cannon, the judge down in Florida, is according to Deary here, not just to look at attorney-client privilege, but possibly executive privilege, and really to, at least in the first instance, decide issues of law that most special masters don't decide. They usually decide issues like which box does this document fit in, not does this box exist. And that's really the central question in this dispute between the president and the Justice Department at this stage.
And in talking about this dispute, Susan, I want to go back to the sound that we played in the open. Former President Trump said, quote, "You'd have a lot of problems in this country, the likes of which you've perhaps never seen." You told our producers that this is chilling, given what we know about what happened on January 6th. Explain your reaction and to the president saying this, to the former president saying this.
It's hard to listen to the words he used to not believe that he's threatening violence by his supporters. If he gets indicted, this is really just extraordinary. And we know from January 6th how followers of President Trump listened to his words. We know that his words fueled these demonstrators to come to Washington, fueled them to march to the Capitol, and they felt were basically marching orders to break in. And so I think it is a of great concern that he would use language like that, because we know January 6th is not over. January 6th was not an event that happened back on January 6th, and we are now just dealing with the particulars of it. This is reflects a movement and a mood and an assault on democracy that we are continuing to have to deal with as a country.
This has got to also frustrate Republicans and really fuel, because it also fuels Democrats and specifically the White House's kind of recalculated message of the past couple weeks, which is to frame the Republican Party and specifically former President Donald Trump as one of the extremists and espousing extremist views and encouraging political violence. When you have interviews like that, it almost does kind of backs that speech that President Biden gave in Philadelphia, many would say. So as Republicans also try to pinpoint the flaws in the economy and flaws with the Biden administration, when you have the former president giving an interview like that, it kind of backs some of the messaging that you're seeing coming out of the White House, that trying to make this upcoming election a real choice between democracy or one that could encourage such violence.
And Josh, what Zolan's talking about, all of this is sort of up in the air as we think about the fact that there could be even more classified documents out there. We heard from a lawmaker that said that lawmakers on Capitol Hill were told by the National Archives that there could be more information out there. Former President Trump is claiming that he's declassified everything and anything that basically that he walked out of the White House with. What's your take on this, given your reporting?
Well, I mean, one issue people are concerned about, Yamiche, is that there were all these empty folders that were found down there that we saw in that image from Trump's office or Trump's closet down there with markings on them like top secret, secure, compartmented information, and maybe even higher levels of classification. And at this point, the Justice Department just cannot be sure that those records have been accounted for, whether they were shown to anyone else, whether they might be in any other places that Trump used during his presidency. So it remains an issue of significant concern. That said, I do think that there is something to his argument that presidents do have very, very broad authority over classified information. And so I do have some doubts that at the end of the day, if there's a criminal charge against former President Trump, that the central part of it is going to be mishandling classified information. I think it's more likely to be found in an area, perhaps obstruction of justice or something along those lines that sidesteps some of those constitutional questions.
That's so interesting, Josh, just thinking about sort of what could end up if there is an indictment of Trump, what could be sort of the thing that would happen. Mariana, I want to bring you in because the other thing that we talked about, of course, is the January 6th committee. They're talking about having a new hearing. We heard from the January 6th committee chair this week, Benny Thompson, saying that they're getting troves of information from the Secret Service. What more do we know about this evidence that's coming in and how lawmakers want to use it?
Yeah, you know, these lawmakers in particular have a timeline. We don't know the results of the midterm election yet, but a lot of people already saying that it's likely going to switch to a Republican majority. We know that if that happens, Minority Leader McCarthy has said, you know what, we're going to disband this committee. So really right now what the lawmakers on the January 6th panel are trying to do is get as much information as possible. You mentioned that the trove of Secret Service, that's just one part of it. And I know that that's something that they would, if they have a hearing, I know there's been certain dates that have been discussed for likely later this month. That could be a part of it. They also want to try and talk to a number of former Trump officials, still get more information from Mark Meadows, if possible, as well as Tony Ornato, who's a deputy chief of staff at the time. And there's some actual back and forth among lawmakers about how much information they have and how much time do they have to even plan a hearing. So it's likely that they could maybe even hold hearings in October, maybe November after the midterms. One thing that Democrats don't really want to talk about right now is things like this. January 6th, they want to keep their messaging on abortion, on other things that may likely help them maybe keep the majority. So that's another consideration that some of these lawmakers are weighing, how much attention to bring to the January 6th committee right now when Republicans could attack them for being too partisan.
And Josh, back to you because you're the legal reporter on this panel. So I have to ask you again, another legal question, which is, what do these subpoenas mean? We have the DOJ handing out some 40 subpoenas, along with the fact that there seem to be in negotiations with the January 6th committee for information.
Well, there's a definite broadening of the public part of this DOJ investigation. What they've been doing behind the scenes, we don't really know. But with all these subpoenas going out, we know that they're looking into the fundraising by President Trump's Save America group, especially around the election recount. Did money really go, for example, to that purpose? Was there some law violation in connection with that rally that was organized, at least purportedly organized by a Women for Trump group? So these are the areas that the investigation is spreading into, as well as the issue of those elector slates from Republican officials in states that Biden actually won, where they put forward slates that some would say are fraudulent. One aspect of the cooperation between the committee, or the lack of it, and the Justice Department is, the Justice Department is about to start a very, very big trial. In 10 days, they're supposed to open the first seditious conspiracy trial involving the Oath Keepers, the first of what could be 2 or 3 seditious conspiracy trials. 5 defendants are supposed to go on the stand. And one of the problems here is, if the House starts dribbling out documents, it's going to just cause a hellish disruption in that trial, because there's going to be demands for the rest of the committee's documents, and that there was a partial disclosure, and that it's all coming so late that they can't process it. So those kinds of interactions may be why the committee has decided not to put out more of its evidence right now.
But we really see these competing timelines, right? The Justice Department clearly getting their meticulous investigation going a little faster. The appointment of the special master definitely slowing down that process. And the House committee seeing this deadline looming, because it is entirely likely that Republicans will win control of the House. That committee will be disbanded. Whatever they need to do, they need to do it as quickly as possible. And it means that we go into, this is the first time we've been in this situation in this country. We go into a midterm election where we're still debating fiercely the outcome of the previous election, and that is likely to be a situation we'll find even in the next presidential election.
Well, Susan, you really wrote the segue to the next part of this show, which is about the midterms. So I want to thank you, Josh, for all of your reporting and breaking down all of the legal aspects of this, and for sharing your reporting.